I want to talk about a couple themes now. I'm just going to give you a quick quote to talk about each of these themes. For emancipation of the serfs, Farce at one point says, this is in Act 2, the peasants kept their distance from the masters, and the masters kept their distance from the peasants back in the old days. But now, everything's all anyhow, and you can't understand anything. Remember I mentioned that Gaev is very quick to put servants in their place. Farce is also a little discombobulated. Both of these men feel that social change is happening too fast, and so they're both struggling with the rapid class changes in their own way. Another thing about the rising business class, these are some lines from Lopakhin's defense of himself after Trofimov has criticized him. Lopakhin says, I get up at 5 every morning, and I work from morning till evening. I am always dealing with money, my own and other people's, and I see what people are like. You've only got to begin doing anything to find out how few honest, honorable people there are. Trofimov had given a wonderful, idealistic speech about the value of work, and it wouldn't be nice if everybody in the world joined together. And Lopakhin is a little bit more realistic, and he says, well, while you've been dreaming, I'm actually working, and look what it's doing for me. I'm rich now. So Lopakhin has a pretty good point, and I think Chekhov is giving each of these men their due. He's not making either of them into a villain. There really is no villain in this story. Gaev gives a speech here during the sunset. Gaev gives a speech to nature. O nature, thou art wonderful, thou shinest with eternal radiance, O beautiful and indifferent one, thou whom we call mother, thou containest in thyself existence and death, thou livest and destroyest. So this whole speech that Gaev is giving, it's just ignoring the fact that the revolution is around the corner. Trofimov is, this is a scene where he's kind of really wooing Anya, but he says, think, Anya, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, all your ancestors were serf owners. They owned living souls. And now, doesn't something human look at you from every cherry in the orchard, every leaf and every stalk? And that's really pretty creepy. But Anya is just swept away by his confidence and his vision, and he's a good speaker and he's educated. So anyway, remember, this is about 15 years before the Russian Revolution happened, but we see this revolutionary character laying the groundwork for really the destruction of the aristocracy, and it's happening right here. Class, talking about class, Lubov encounters a tramp, a transient, and with a start she says, take this, here you are, feels in her purse. She wants to give him a silver coin, can't find any silver, gives him gold, doesn't matter, here, takes some gold. And the tramp says, I'm deeply grateful to you. I imagine he bows and he plays that he's being, doing obeisance to his better. But when he exits, he laughs at her. He scored some money off this scared rich lady. Varya, the practical, sensible one who's been trying to keep the house together, is disgusted with her mother for giving money away to a tramp when they don't have enough food to feed the servants at home. She's just disgusted. Here's the next point. I really want to I don't want to label this one because I want you to think about it. But here's a stage direction, and this is kind of a famous stage direction that people who study Chekhov have thought about quite a bit. They all sit thoughtfully. It is quiet. Only the mumbling of Farce is heard. Suddenly, a distant sound is heard, as if from the sky, the sound of a breaking string, which dies away sadly. Okay? End of Act 2. Lubov challenges Trofimov's manhood. Okay? Here's a scene where Lubov seems to be frustrated that Trofimov, who's just been giving all these speeches about how he's too intellectual, he's above love, he doesn't have time for love, Lubov kind of wants him to step up and actually ask Anya to marry him. Put up or shut up. She says, you're not above love, you're just what our Farce calls a bungler. Not to have a mistress at your age. And there's some subtext going on here. She's disgusted with him, that he is not interested in women. He says in horror, this is awful. What is she saying? goes quickly into the drawing room, clutching his head. And I think there's something comic going on here, because he says, "It's awful, I can't stand it, I'll go away." Exits, but returns at once. "All is over between us." Exit. Lubov calls after him, "Peter, wait, silly man, I was joking." And she's thinking of him as the boyish student who used to teach her son. So she's being affectionate, and maybe she was teasing him, and maybe she thinks she was going too far. But he's just said, "I'm leaving, all is over between us." And as soon as he leaves, somebody is heard going out and falling downstairs noisily. Anya and Varya scream. Laughter is heard. Lubov says, "What is that?" And Anya comes in, running in, laughing, and she says, "Peter's fallen downstairs," and runs out again. So he's just given this dramatic exit line where he's disgusted with the aristocracy and he's leaving forever. And as soon as he leaves, he has a pratfall off stage. Thumble, crump, you hear crashing, and people laughing at him. So Lubov says, this Peter's a marvel. So he kind of ruins his big dramatic exit. And I think that's one of the many elements where we can really see in Act 3 the elements that make this play a farce. It's comical. It's funny. The people are witty in a way that Oscar Wilde's characters are witty, although I think Oscar Wilde is trying to be trivial and putting like a surface polish on it, and Chekhov is going a little bit deeper. But anyway, there are a lot of farcical elements. There's a big party. They're having a party on the day that the house is being auctioned. And Carlotta is performing magic tricks. And Varya, remember, she's the sensible one who's been running the household. She's disgusted that the clerk Epikhodov is acting like a guest, playing billiards with the guests, when really he's an employee. Farce is recalling dreamily the good old days when they had balls where barons and admirals would come to the party, and the party guests are nowhere near as high in social status at this point. Dunyasha, the maid, is powdering her face and trying to flirt with Yasha, but Yasha is griping about the low culture here in the sticks and the boonies. He wants to go back to Paris with his mistress, and he's bored by what's going on here. He's really acting like a young gentleman, though he is a servant. His social status is the same as Dunyasha, but he's got a better job than Dunyasha, so she's attracted to him. Now, meanwhile, Varya is still upset at Epikhodov for acting like a jerk in this party, and she actually chases him with a stick and hits him. And she accidentally hits Lopakhin instead. And this is funny. It's some physical comedy. You'd have to have actors who could master this timing and not make any of these scenes drag, as these very different things are happening all at once. Lopakhin's monologue in Act 3. You basically cast the role of Lopakhin based on who delivers this monologue best. Anything else follows after it. This is a show-stopping, famous monologue. I'm not going to tell you everything that happens in the monologue because I don't want to spoil the story. I want you to read it yourself. But when you read this monologue, recognize that Lopakhin mentions Leonid Andreevich, and that's Gaev. Those are the familiar first and middle names of Gaev. So he's speaking in a friendly way of Gaev, the older brother, the one who has gone to this auction. Gaev has gone to the auction with some money that one of his relatives gave him, with the idea that he could use this money to buy the mortgage back from the bank and keep the household, the estate, in the family. Now, Varya has a reaction to the news that Lopakhin gives. It is a silent action that she does. You'll see it in the stage directions, and I think that's significant. Just take a look at that. Now, Lopakhin, throughout the play, is a sympathetic character. His story that he tells during this particular speech is moving, and we're rooting for him in a certain way. But consider Lubov. Lubov is also a sympathetic character. She has no lines during his speech. And in a play, if you were looking at it on stage, Lubov, the actress, would be a great actress. She would not just be sitting there blank-faced, she would be acting the entire time Lopakhin is giving his great speech, and the audience's attention would be divided between what Lopakhin is saying and how Lubov is reacting, or, in keeping with Chekhov, how she is not reacting. And again, she has no lines. Anya ends the scene with some lines to Lubov, about Lubov, and that does really leave the focus on Lubov. But again, she's the speech was Lopakhin's, and the aristocracy is silent at this point. Act 4, what really matters in Chekhov is not so much what happens, but what doesn't happen. So I want to mention a lot of possibilities in Act 4, and I'd like you to consider what does or doesn't happen as a result of these various pairings and possibilities. There's a scene where Dunyasha and Yasha, the servants, are alone together, and Dunyasha the maid is asking Yasha, the uppity, arrogant footman, to write to her. And see what happens in that scene. She knows a parting is happening. Gaev takes a bank job, and this is a real step down for an aristocrat. He's taking on a 9-to-5 job working with somebody else's money. And anyway, that's how he's going to make ends meet now that the cherry orchard problem is solved in the way that it is. And now remember the pistol that Yepikodov was brandishing in Act 2? Okay. And you remember the rifle that Charlotta was brandishing? Remember, there's Chekhov's rule of, consistency and efficiency in storytelling. What's going on here? Lubov at one point arranges for Varya and Lopakhin to have some time on stage alone. If you remember from The Rivals, and if you remember from The Importance of Being Earnest, if the matron arranges time for two young people to be alone, you know what they're going to talk about. So, we have Anya and Trofimov. They're excited about tomorrow. Well, why is that? Our doors in our day and age, if you're locked in someplace, there's a safety catch. You can easily unlock a door from the inside. So just understand that when you see what happens in Act 4. And I also want to draw your attention to that final sound effect in Act 4 and recall what happens near the end of Act 2. The Cherry Orchard has the subtitle that Chekhov gave it, a comedy in 4 acts. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Knowing what you might know already about a tragedy versus a comedy, what do you make of that subtitle, a comedy in 4 acts? And what do you make of all the scenes and the possibilities and the subplot endings that I kind of walk you through at the end there of Scene 4? I'm hoping that this introduction has given you plenty to think about as you study and read and talk about Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard.